Yeah.
So it's great to meet you, and I want to begin our conversation with living through the last 3.5 years.
Okay.
How did you get through the pandemic, and how did it change you?
Wow. That's probably one of the best questions I think I've ever been asked.
Good.
Like genuinely. So the pandemic for me, on the one hand, I think I was extremely lucky because I was actually alone for it. I was living in Canada and I was living with my ex-fiance in my apartment over there. And I was, yeah, I mean, isolated from my family. I couldn't get back to the UK, obviously, and my father lives in Ukraine, so I couldn't be with my family. And in the pandemic, I got engaged, which was amazing, and I was super happy. And yeah, I got engaged in the pandemic and I called off the engagement in the pandemic. So I ended up spending the pandemic like cocooned in my apartment with my ex-fiance, basically going from like connecting and everything being good and then everything falling apart. And it was on the one hand, again, I say I'm lucky because I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
I think if I'd actually been alone, I think it could have been a lot worse because I don't know how I would have handled being so isolated. Instead, what happened was I had some of the most traumatic years of my life because I was engaged with a man that I knew deep down, I think he knew deep down that we weren't actually meant to be together. We weren't the right match. And so we spent the entire pandemic doing a lot of online marriage counseling, doing a lot of fighting, a lot of conflict, mediation, and trying to figure out, what's actually going on, why are we both feeling so bad, and really digging deep and working through all the nitty gritty cracks of a relationship with so much intention and pressure, as you know, like what the pandemic was, and
Yeah.
being literally cocooned in it. Like there was no escape.
Yeah.
I was really lucky that my job was going pretty well, so that wasn't taking up too much mental stress. And obviously, I couldn't get home, so there was literally no escape. It was just like, focus on this.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm now a relationship coach, right? So that was a very formative experience for me, really, really hard. And I wouldn't want to go back and do it again. But so many learnings and so much wisdom that I gleaned from that that really inspired me to think, okay, this is actually an area of life that I really want to work in. And yeah, it's now what I do full time.
Wow, that's fascinating. What a wonderful story. And to get to this point where you're actually helping people and pulling them
Hmm.
through what you were
Yeah.
living through. So let's get to the essence of exactly what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's
Okay.
career day. And one of the kids is
Okay.
curious and says, "What do you do for a living?" How would you
Okay.
answer them?
I help. I help. I helped get your mum and dad together, and I help keep them happy.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I think I wanted to be a vet.
Okay. Okay. Did you ever pursue anything like that?
Well, when I realized I have to put animals down, I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But saying that, I do actually have three very sick foster cats right now that I'm looking after. So maybe that, that instinct did stay with me. Um, but I will say I was always really obsessed with relationships. Like I was really curious about like the dynamics. I grew up with a lot of like soap operas. I grew up in Eastern Europe, so we loved the soap operas with the really bad dubbing. And so I grew up watching those and all the dramas. And then my cousins and I would like role play and act them out and just all the kind of the relational dramas I was so interested in. And then my favorite computer game was like The Sims. And I really loved like watching them get into little relationships. And so yeah, I think like my entire life I was kind of geared with this fascination around the psychology and the behavioral science of connection. But I never knew that it could be actually a career because I didn't study psychology. I
Yeah.
actually studied gender. I studied gender studies and like more kind of sociology. And yeah, I just always thought like this isn't something I can do. And I probably don't want to be a therapist because I don't know if I have the resilience to actually go into the depths of trauma and kind of the harder stuff. I don't think I've got the bandwidth to do that. But then I discovered coaching and I was like, oh, this is like present focused and future focused, and I can integrate my strategic mindset. And this is about goals and about tools and techniques and empowering people. Okay, this is cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned your geography and your history. Where were you born and raised, and how did all of this kind of become into you being a relationship coach now?
Yeah. So I was actually born in Slovakia, in Eastern Europe. And that's got relevance because growing up there, and I spent a lot of my childhood between Slovakia, England, and Russia. So I'm half Russian, half Slovakian. My father now lives in Ukraine. So really fun mix there
Yeah.
to play with. But yeah, so I grew up in Eastern Europe, and that comes, I mean, anyone from Eastern Europe will hear me when I say this. It does come with certain cultural expectations
Mhm.
around relationship and like being a man, being a woman, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not even like masculine, feminine, it's like man, woman, like very simple. And so I moved to the UK and then I joined, I started ballet and I went to a girls' school and I was doing all the little feminine things. And it was, yeah, I was really lucky because I grew up in a really lovely part of the UK and I had a really privileged upbringing. Um, but I think that kind of nomadic energy from relocating countries from such a young age got instilled in me. And so then I ended up living in Italy when I was 19. Like I moved to Italy for a year to study. And then I moved back from Italy. I loved it though, but I couldn't speak Italian. And then when I graduated, I moved to Spain, where I am right now. So
Mhm.
I lived in Spain for a while. Then I left Spain. I then went to Dubai. I lived in the Middle East. And it was when I lived in Dubai in the Middle East that I was like, okay, this kind of like gender stuff I'm really interested in because I it's a very gendered society over there, right? Like there's very clear hierarchies and very clear differences, and yeah, that got me really curious, and that's when I decided to go back to university and study this full time, and that's when I slowly moved into behavioral science and discovered psychology and organizational development, and then discovered coaching, and so yeah, it was kind of like a international road to
Oh
get
yeah.
here.
So there's all
Yeah,
kinds of zigzags going on that we're
yeah,
all
yeah,
not
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, you're obviously highly driven. Who's been a hero and inspiration for you to be who you are?
Oh, really good question. Um, well, I was going to say Esther Perel. I don't know if she's actually a hero though. More, I met her in 2017 at a conference, and I was like, wow. And then I started really following her stuff, and yeah, I love her approach because she's quite tough on people, and I think that's kind of my energy, like not in a nasty way, but
Yeah.
I think I have a lot of frustration with how topics like relationships are seen as really like soft and fluffy.
Mhm.
And the people that I focus on, the executives and the entrepreneurs, and that's like my main demographic. I was going to say the second heroes is like Tony Robbins, which is really cliche, but that was like the first self-help book I read, I think when I was like 9 years old. Because my dad is now a coach, so I kind of grew up in this personal development household. And I was going to say Tony Robbins, but he's a very like masculine, rah, 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 business, career, wealth, expansion kind of guy.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of accepted, like it's really widely accepted. And I was actually just writing a load of content about, New Year's resolutions and setting goals for 2024. And so much of the default is setting goals around our career, our wealth, our investments, maybe our health. That might come in there a little bit, but that's not really that prioritized, right? Like it's typically the career stuff. And it's baffling to me because actually, when I look at relationships, who you marry or who you spend your life with is the most important decision of your life.
Yeah.
It affects your mental health, it affects your network, it affects your career, it affects your finances, it affects the home you live in, the country you live in. Like it literally affects everything. And back to kind of the hero question, like that's why I really like Esther Perel because she kind of lays it down a little bit. Like she had a really great quote. She was like, she was talking to Steve Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and she said, "Have you ever met anyone who treats their business like their relationship? No, like it would be dead.
Yeah. Right.
It would be dead, right?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now and someone that influences you, who would it be? Who would you love to sit down and talk to?
Really good question. And I probably have a bit of a weird answer here. Um, but it's kind of my own little personal like nerding out. So one of my favorite writers who actually wrote a lot about the Midwest is Raymond Carver.
Yeah.
I'm a peer-reviewed academic in Carver studies. So random. But when I discovered Carver, I was like 14 years old
Huh?
and I read his books, his short stories. I think it was Shortcuts. And I remember being like, oh, wow. Like, again, it's all about relationships, right? Like, her stuff's all about relationships, kind of the banal, like the ordinary, the extra, like ordinary of the day to day.
Yeah.
And the people aren't anything special, but it's just like studying their dynamics. And when I read his text, I was so, I don't know, there's something that's pulled me in. And I remember saying to my teacher at the time, I was like, I'm going to do my thesis on him when I'm at uni. And she was like, you're 14, shut up. Like, what do you know? And then I did. I did.
Yeah.
I went to university and I studied him for my master, for my undergrad. And then when I went back to uni 6 years later, I went to do my master's, I was like, I'm just going to study him again. Like, I
Yeah.
loved it. I love his literature. And I love the way he writes about love. I
Mhm.
mean, the whole class is what we talk about when we talk about love.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think because I did Hemingway studies as well when
Mhm.
I was living in Italy, because Hemingway lived in Italy as well. And I love Hemingway too, but I like the kind of the more softer, like the kind of the more open-hearted energy of Carver. I
Yeah.
would love to meet him.
Yeah.
That'd
Yeah.
be
His
magic.
writing, his writing's amazing. So what is the inspiration? What's the motivation every day for you? Because you're not just doing a job, you're helping people, you're pulling people to
Mm.
a new place. What is that motivation that gets you out of bed, that gets you moving? And then you yourself, what's the inspiration to evolve as a human as well?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's really poignant because, you're my last meeting of this year. Like I'm after this, I'm going to sit and reflect on the year that's been. And it's the end of my first year in business. And it's been hard. It's been really hard. Like I'm ending on a good note. I'm happy. I'm proud of where I've got to. But it's hard. And it's been hard, like with any business owner, like when you're starting up, scrambling around, trying to figure out like what am I actually doing? How do I even build this thing? Who am I? And I remember like I think it was even a month ago, I was so petrified of being on camera and doing content and all of that. And I'm like, I'm not a content creator. And now today I like ordered like 4 videos. I'm like, get them out, So
Yeah.
it's really transformed. But it's been hard. And there have been moments, especially earlier in the year, when, I wasn't really earning much. And like I'm still not earning what I was earning in corporate. And kind of looking back at my like cushy corporate life and thinking, oh, that 9 to 5 would be lovely. It would be lovely to go back to that and to have like all my healthcare and all my
Mhm.
benefits and the little massage allowance. But I know that when I was there, I didn't feel the level of impact that I feel now. And I didn't feel that connection. Right. So when I go coach a client, and even especially after kind of they agree to work with me, they sign up, and I see that like glimmer of hope in their eyes, and I start sending over the intake forms and they start like digging into the work, and I see them already kind of begin to view their direction differently. They go from feeling disheartened and kind of like defeated and a bit lost to like, okay, I have a plan. I have a plan about how to turn my life around. I have a methodology. I have the support. And my whole thing is like, I love the support. I just love the support. And I always want to give to people the kind of support that I wish I'd had. And I was lucky. I had some good coaches and some were really, really supportive. But I did always feel a little bit of like a withholding from them because, like bandwidth and professionalism. And I get that. And at the same time, one of the things I always want my clients to feel is like, I'm here with you because this stuff's really, really hard.
Yeah.
This stuff's really hard. And especially if you've come out from a divorce or a broken engagement or a really painful breakup, it's the holidays now and you're probably alone. Like I just did a shout out actually to my local community. I was like, if anyone's feeling alone over Christmas, like write to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be here with my husband, right? Like I'm spending Christmas here, but
Yeah.
I'm still here on the island. I've got a ton of resources to help you, and you're not alone
Yeah.
because that's like the worst feeling, right?
Yeah.
Then that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. So you're talking about helping all these people. What's one of your favorite success stories? Obviously, it needs to be anonymous, but what is the story that always puts a smile on your face?
Yeah, it's an interesting story because the woman's life like just transformed completely. And it's not that she's in a relationship now. Like we only finished working together a couple of weeks ago, and my program's like 3 months. So there's no guarantee that you're going to meet a partner. But it's more important than that. It's really like you will meet a partner, but the rest of your life's going to change too.
Yeah.
And sometimes the rest of your life needs to change first to get yourself kind of, I'd say like ducks in a row, it's a bit English saying, but to say that, you know, you kind of get everything into alignment, as cliche as it is, so that then when you meet that partner, everything's unfolding very organically. And so when we were working together, it happened quite quickly that she was like, okay, I need to quit my job. I actually need to leave the UK. I'm actually going to put my apartment up for rent. I'm actually going to spend some time with my family because they're getting really old and I actually want to be with my parents whilst, you know, they're sick before they get sick. And now she's moving to Spain. And I'm kind of like, she's not moving to anywhere near where I'm moving. And I'm definitely not a catalyst for that. She was in Spain before, but it's such a amazing kind of turnaround.
Yeah.
And then the other stories are, I have one client in particular who I'm still working with who actually came in whilst he was in a relationship and really ready to break up with his partner. And now they're like happily, everything's good, everything's solid, and they're solidifying their relationship. And then yeah, I've got some lovely client stories of actually finding their partner. And it's still early days, right? Like I've been doing this for a year,
Yeah.
but it's a different type of relationship to what they had before. Like it's
Yeah.
different. There's not that feeling of like, am I wasting my time with this person? Am I
Yeah.
settling? It's actually like a holy cow,
Yeah.
this is something different. Yeah.
So, as a relationship coach, what's one of your favorite stories? I mean, you got Romeo and Juliet, you got all these people. What's your favorite relationship story historically?
Oh, I don't actually know. Like, what's my favorite relationship story? Um, I might even say, I actually think it's like me and my husband. Can I say that?
Yeah, that I was going to say it could be personal, it could be
Yeah.
in fabled land with Shakespeare, but yeah,
Yeah, I actually think it's me and my husband because I think it's such a, like, someone had told me, actually, it's funny, my own relationship coach, so when I called off my first engagement and I was freaking out and, you know, crying and going through the depths of despair, and my own relationship coach, she was like, look, you're doing the inner work. You're doing the inner work, like you're doing it. And trust me, you will find the right one sooner than you think. And she was like, it might even be by the end of the year. And I remember thinking, like, no, like it wouldn't be this year. Like I'm broken. I'm broken. There's no way it'll be this year. And I met him 11 months later. Like 11 months later of, yeah, doing lots of inner work and doing a lot of the introspection and the growth and the healing that I teach my clients. And I teach them within 90 days, not 11 months. But I met him and I met him when I was kind of it would be week 12 of my program. So I was like out there living my best life. And I was at a music festival and I'd gone alone. And yeah, I literally was just like, oh, screw it. Like, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling pretty confident. I'm excited for my future. I've got all these plans. And I'm just going to go to this big music festival with like 20,000 people. I'm going to go completely on my own because I feel great and it's fine. And I went and I was just like dancing away. And then he tapped me on the shoulder and I turned around and I remember I didn't even know what he looked like because it was dark. And but I just felt the energy. I felt something. I felt safe. I felt excited. I felt like this is someone I need to know. And I like flung my arms around his neck, gave him a massive hug. He was a bit like, what is going on? Like
yeah,
this one's a bit intense. But then we danced and we exchanged numbers, and turns out he was from Canada, and where I'd funnily enough been living, but I was in London, and he was just kind of transiting through, and we ended up exchanging numbers and then just texting all night. And then I think a few days later, he came over, which again, I'd never in my life considered inviting a man over to my apartment. I was so like, no, like put the barriers up and
uh-huh.
be safe. But I was like, no, he felt safe. He felt fine. And so he came over, and I think we actually watched a documentary on cats in the background, which is the most like weird thing to do. Um, but it was like the most relaxed that I'd ever felt in the company of a man.
Yeah,
And I just felt like 100% myself. I felt authentic. I felt free. And then, yeah, within like the first week before he went back to Canada, we'd basically, you know, again, kind of following my own process, I'd got through all the different things that were important to me, like all the non-negotiables. I knew within the first 7 days, within 3 days, I knew that he was a good match.
yeah,
And I remember at that point calling my friends, being like, well, he's going back to Canada now, and I'm planning to move to Spain. So I don't know how this is going to work. And
yeah,
he was planning to move to Colombia. So it's like, I don't know how this is going to work, but I think I'm going to marry this guy.
yeah,
And my friends were like, really? You're wild. And they were like, he's not your type. You know, he doesn't look anything like your type. And even like kind of the background, his background is nothing like the kind of background. And I saw his dating app picture and I was like, I would not have swiped on you.
Right.
So the fact it all kind of just aligned, and yeah, and then 2 months later, I went to Canada after talking nonstop every day. Went to Canada, I spent 10 days with him, met his mom, quit my job, he quit his job. And then we started traveling around the world together, trying to see like, is this actually a thing? Are we actually going to do this? Are we actually going to be together? And then we got engaged and got married, and here we are.
That's wonderful. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You've talked about going around the world. You've been on all these different adventures. So I'm curious, when we get off the phone, if a time machine pulls up in front of your house, you can go back in time and see one event in human history. Where are you going? What do you want to see with your own eyes?
Oh, these are such good questions. Um, well, I've got two answers. I do want to see the dinosaurs, but I don't want to be
Yeah.
there.
Right,
Like, I
right.
want to
Yeah.
see them from
Yeah,
afar,
yeah, right.
right? From
Yeah,
afar, like no risk to my life. I would like to see that, but I've always been fascinated by like ancient Egypt. So
yeah,
random. I've always been fascinated by that. I I don't know why. I think just as a child, like I find it such an intriguing culture and history.
yeah,
Um, like so much kind of mythology around that. But if I can have a third, I'd go back to Roman Carver times, which I know
yeah,
is like the 60s, right? Just to again
yeah.
see things unfold. I think it's a really interesting era, and I'm not quite of the age to have seen the 60s. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. That would be great. I remember going to Rome and a cell phone went off in the Colosseum, and I was like, the ultimate clashing of cultures. It was so weird,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
all that antiquity and then the modern technology. It was pretty wild. So
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like that about Rome. When I went there, there's something about that place that really draws me in. My
Oh, I
ancestors
bet.
came from Italy,
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah. So there's an ancestral thing, but there's something special. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
so at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. You have all these
Hmm.
people in your life. You have your family, you have your friends, clients, everyone, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's such a lovely question. Um, I would like to think that I'm very like empathic. I would like to think that if I'm going to leave any kind of legacy or be known for anything, I would like to be known for being honest and kind. And by honest, that might mean that I have some truths that I need to say, right? But I'm going to say them kindly. And if I have to help people, then I want to help them again in the kindest way, but in the most honest way. And that comes down to being empathic as well.
Yeah,
I think one of the kind of qualms I have with a lot of the coaches in the coaching industry is that they're very dishonest. There's a lot of dishonesty around. There's a lot of, screaming from the rooftops about making 7-figure years in like month one or something stupid. And there's tons of disingenuous coaches who are like unhappily single, claiming to be marriage coaches. I've come across a few, and I just find it baffling. I'm kind of like,
yeah,
for what purpose are you doing it? It must be really hard to be living so out of integrity. Um, so I never want to do that. I want to be, I want to be kind. I want to be kind of teach what I know and
yeah,
help people from an honest and yeah, empathic way. Does that
yeah.
answer the
No,
question?
that's excellent. Yeah, no, that's great.
Cool.
That's exactly what people need that are in that
Mm.
position. So if anyone wants to hire you, anyone wants to learn more about you,
Hmm.
where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, so my website's a great place to start, katarinapolonska.com. And on the website, I actually have a diagnostic that I built in partnership with a psychologist. It's really cool. It'll help you see what's blocking you from creating an ultimate relationship, with you in relationship or single. Well worth doing. I wish I'd had that. It would have pointed me in the right way when
Yeah.
I was in the wilderness. But yeah, that's a great place to start. You can actually book a call with me directly there, or just email me, Katarina@katarinapolonska.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Katarina Polonska. There's not many people with my name, so it's quite easy
Right.
to
Yeah.
find me, or LinkedIn.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah,
find. Yeah, Katarina, I'm glad that this is your 23 send off in podcast
it
land.
is.
So have a wonderful 24.
Thank
Enjoy the
you.
holidays. It was great to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
You too. You too. Thank you.
Take care.